up. Get ready. It's going to be a very, very intense journey. Begin.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 94 of Frame Skip, your weekly video game podcast, sometimes including math equations. I am Austin Eller, and I'm joined by Coach, the bicyclist, Kyle.
Cyclist. The cyclist. The
No,
cycling.
I'm just following Seth's lead from last episode.
Yeah, okay. I was having crazy deja vu, and I was like, oh no, am I stuck in a loop? This is just like last Monday.
What's up, Coach?
Nothing much, man.
Did you just ride your bike home?
Today, no. Only because I had to get to school early. And I rode yesterday. Had a good 25-mile ride. And by about 5 o'clock, I was out. So I slept for 2 hours. So, of course, it's midnight and I'm still awake. So,
yeah. Well, excellent.
Yeah.
George, we're also joined by you. You did not ride your bike to work.
Yeah, where's my cool nickname? Austin.
George, the Gundam lover himself.
The Gundam God. The Gundam God.
There we go. The Gundam God Loftus.
GL, baby. That's me. GL squared. Yeah.
What's up, George? How are you?
I am awesome. I have played 2 hours of video games since the last time we recorded. I played Deep Rock Galactic. Shocking everyone. Yeah. God, and I took a break and it felt fantastic.
Well, you want to tell us what you took a break, what you were doing in that downtime?
I was watching a lot of anime and I was building a lot of Gundam models, and I was also not editing Shortbox Summary, which is why there just wasn't an episode last week. First time in 4 months I missed an episode. I don't even care. I needed a break. I hate editing audio so much.
It happens. It's very very peculiar. It's very, very peculiar process, and it's not fun at times. So I get it.
Well, it's just like, hey, let's just sit down and talk for an hour and a half. It's like, oh, that's great. That's super fun. And then it's like, hey, why don't you sit down and listen to every possible fault in that hour and a half and do your best to polish that turd, and then make this hour and a half last about, let's say, like 2.5 hours, maybe, if you're good. It just sucks, man. Like, it just really sucks. And I recorded an episode last week with my buddy Sean, who I haven't talked to in a minute. He's one of my favorite people to talk to. He's just like such a sweet boy, despite being a Ravens fan. And we just got so drunk talking about X-Men. And I've been like trying consciously to like make Shortbox Summary shorter, to in fact fit into a short box, ideally, not one of those long box summaries. And I ended up writing like the longest summary I ever have for a comic. And then I got the drunkest I've ever been recording that podcast. And we just talked for probably like the longest running podcast ever. I want to say it was like 2 hours talking about 6 issues of X-Men that honestly aren't that great. Like, they're not super important, but we just got lost in it. It was just nice catching up with a buddy, dorking out about stuff.
So just to continue on this comic book trend, I this week have been reading Moon Knight, the 2006 run.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying it. I was trying to read some Moon Knight stuff before the show came out because I didn't really know much about him as a character. And I think I had mentioned in the Slack that the first few issues of that series are very confusing. And I think it's because it definitely wants you to go in with some background knowledge of who he is as a character and like his supporting cast. And so the first like 3 issues, I was just totally lost as to what was happening and like who was talking and what was going on. But I want to say I'm 7 or 8 issues now, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's like it's really brutal, which I was a little shocked by. I mean, I knew it was going to be a little more intense just knowing a little bit about his character, but it's a pretty like dark and violent comic, I'd say, for Marvel.
Is it out already, the series?
Not yet. It'll be out this week. So
yeah,
I want to say it's
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Austin, help me out. The first few issues of that series are drawn, I believe, by David Finch.
I think you're right.
And then I think it's written by, is it Greg Hurwitz? Or is it...
It says Charlie Huston is the writer.
Okay. Yes, that feels right. Yeah, big crime writer, I believe, doing a lot of like trade paperbacks at the time. Yeah, it started off like just super dark. David Finch is like this incredible artist. Like you can see like so many 90s influences. Like you can feel Jim Lee when you look at that stuff. And then I think he normally has this guy named Danny Mickey who does the coloring. And so like his stuff, especially in the mid 2000s, just had like bleeding edge, like CGI like coloring to it that just looked really, really good. Like those guys did the first issues of like New Avengers and the first or last issues, I guess, of old Avengers, with Avengers Disassembled and whatnot. But damn, that series was so confusing to 14-year-old George, who knew about Moon Knight before that.
Yeah,
He knew what? That's sick, dude.
Well, anyway, yeah, no, it kind of lost me at the start. So I think at some point I'm going to have to figure out like the lead up to this, because I am at a point now where I think it's issue 6 is where it starts tying into Civil War, but it's only slightly. It's like people start showing up and they're like, hey, like, buddy, you should probably register type situation.
Oh, wow.
And
nice.
So it's understandable for me because I at least know like the overall plot of Civil War. I've never actually read it, but I know the idea and I know the overall plot. So it hasn't tied in enough where I'm like, okay, I don't get what's going on. I think from what I can tell, he kind of stays on the outside a little bit.
It's super confusing too, because unless I'm mistaken, Moon Knight also has a tie-in with like the epilogue of Civil War called Casualties of War. And it's not confusing that he was in that. It's confusing that he's one of like 4 series to like have that banner on. It's like that, like a Punisher comic, which I guess kind of makes sense given where the story goes. But I hate that era of Punisher so freaking much. Right. Very, very confusing. But also, oh my god, that's why I made Shortbox. That is just such a cool time for comics. I love that. Era
and
so much.
The last thing I have to say, because I know this is not a comic book podcast, but this is like, I really haven't been gaming much the past week, so this is going to be my big thing for the show this time. I had brought this up to you, George, about, a while back when Black Widow came out, the MCU film, you had kind of talked about how you thought Taskmaster kind of sucked in the comics.
100%, yeah.
Kind of wasn't a great character. And I've never read anything with Taskmaster in it before until this series. And George, Taskmaster sucks.
It took a minute. Like what happens with these characters is, and like these storylines that get brought up like years later, it's like a character comes out and they absolutely suck, right? Like they're just not cool. Like they have a cool costume or something, whatever, but like they never have anything like really cool materialize with them. And then someone who was a kid when that happened grows up to be a comic book author, and they're like, that was the coolest freaking guy I've ever seen in my entire life. And then they just completely reinvent the villain and like steal them, basically make them their own, and then like reincorporate them. And so this era of Taskmaster is atrocious. It's so bad and so dumb. I think we're now getting into the era where like writers like Donny Cates and like what's the other ones? Like Al Ewing and a bunch of other authors are just like, no, this is actually like kind of a cool guy. And so they're doing their best to like make him work. But man, mid 2000s, not super kind to old Taskmaster. I think he eventually becomes like an instructor at the Avengers Initiative Academy post Civil War. But like that sucks too,
dude. My first and look, this is spoilers from a comic from like 15 years ago. So it sucks to be you, I guess, if you're concerned about spoilers from 2006. But
no
like
one read it back then. No one read it back then anyway, so don't worry about it.
My first like experience with Taskmaster in the comics is he shows up, acts like he's gonna beat the crap out of Moon Knight, and then some random lady shoots him in the face with a revolver, and then an old butler like shoots him with an old like pirate shotgun weapon. The dude runs out a window, jumps in some old like rusty white GMC van, goes to some other building, and then Moon Knight rams him with a jet. It's like, dude, this guy sucks.
New York is harder than Taskmaster. Yeah.
So, anyway.
He was cool in Spider-Man in the game.
Yeah, he was cool in the game. I liked him in the game, actually.
And he's got cool powers and a cool costume.
Yeah. And you know what we need more of in the Arkham universe as far as games is we need a Deathstroke game. like bad.
Oh yeah.
I've always wanted to have Deathstroke.
I'm surprised they haven't tried to make him like a main villain in one of those games. I'm kind of over the whole like Joker in every single title. I would hope that if they ever revisit that universe, they kind of take a look at some other villains.
He's in Arkham Origins.
I never played Origins, I never played City, and I never played Night. I've only played Asylum.
You've never played Arkham City?
Arkham City came out 2 weeks before midterms, or like a week before midterms.
October.
It was like that and like Uncharted 3, like my senior year of college.
Yeah.
So I grabbed it. I played 2 hours of it, which to me, like, I don't feel comfortable saying I played that game. I played an extended demo, right? But my favorite Bat character is this woman named Cassandra Kane, who is Batgirl. Does she is that name familiar to any of you guys? Does she show up in the games? She is the coolest freaking comic book character I've ever seen. And her character is really interesting because she's like mute. So like she can't speak in the first couple years of her like appearances. And so her comics are like mostly silent. There's like maybe 30 words spoken in each issue. And it's usually by other characters to her. But she's like the daughter of Lady Shiva and I think his name is Kane, who's like they're the two most powerful assassins like in the world. Like they're the two greatest assassins for men and women. And they conceived a child who was raised by Kane, who then they made to be like the greatest hand-to-hand combat fighter in the world. And like she regularly kicks Bruce Wayne's ass. Like she is hands down like the best melee combat fighter in all of Gotham, if not all of the DC universe.
Can she
like,
take out Damian?
With her like eyes closed. Yeah, she's so cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not
Damian
so
sucks. I hate Damian.
I like him.
I can't stand that little turd.
No. he was a little turd at first, but now he's grown on me.
I will admit he's gotten better 1,000%. I like him so much more now than when he was first introduced. And like that was by design. Grant Morrison, great writer, knew what they were doing. But like, man, I miss Tim Drake, and Tim Drake just got the shaft as soon as Damian showed up.
I mean, that's the same thing with Ahsoka too. When she first came on the scene, everyone hated her.
Yeah.
Right. And it took about half a season. Yeah, no.
God, she was so cool in that show, though.
I saw a movie this weekend that I should have watched in the early 2000s.
Okay. What was it?
Okay, so I'm very hesitant on not necessarily remakes, but when they take a series and they take it to the movies. But boy, was I an idiot for not watching it when it came out. But it's Miami Vice.
Oh, the Michael Mann movie.
Yes, I watched it last night because I'm like, it's the episodes are on Peacock, the original, the 5 seasons. They dropped them on Peacock, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was my jam. That was my 5th, 6th grade year, right? Was Miami Vice, watching that. But half the time, because it came on at 9:00 in either 9 or 10 in San Diego. So half the time I wouldn't make it. I'd fall asleep before it even get on. But and when it came out, when it was original, I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna watch this. This is probably just some joke, right? But man, from beginning to end, that was such a good movie.
I have never seen it in one sitting. I remember the angriest my high school girlfriend ever got at me, because like I didn't have my license the first like year we were dating. And so I begged her to drive me to town so we could see Miami Vice. The only time it was playing was at 9:45, and that is not like a short movie. And she had to work the next day, and we had no idea how long it was. So I was sitting there. I fell asleep in the middle because I was like exhausted, admittedly. I fell asleep for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Please calm down, coach. Stop looking at me like that. It was 5 minutes.
Sorry.
And then, then I was on the edge of my seat for like the rest of that movie. I still don't love it as much as other Michael Mann movies. I rewatch it like once a year, waiting to get there. I still think Last of the Mohegans or Heat are like probably his best movies. But that movie's like really special. And my girlfriend was like livid with me for like dragging her to that movie that she said is the worst movie she's ever seen at the time, that it was so long that she had to work the next morning. I don't really care. She was cheating on me the entire time we were dating. So that worked out great. But God darn it, what a movie theater experience that was, despite falling asleep for 5 minutes. We were sunburned. Like we were out on the beach all day. We were sleepy. You know how it is. It's a summer. Also, coolest trailer I remember in high school when that came out, because it had the like the Linkin Park Jay-Z mashup. just look hella.
I've
The
never,
only
never
movie-
experienced Miami Vice at all. So I've never watched the show or anything.
Show's awesome. Like you should go back and watch it. But
Yeah.
the only movie I ever fell asleep to in the theater was what was the spoof on Star Wars?
Spaceballs? Are you kidding me?
Spaceballs, bro. I couldn't stand that movie.
Oh my God.
That
Yes.
seems like such a coach experience.
No, it was in high school, and we all went as a group. And there's like 10 of us, I remember, and I was out. I thought
so
the
do
only
you like it
funny-
now, or do you still not like it?
No, I mean, I don't.
Okay.
I haven't watched it since then,
Wow.
right? The only funny part was when his ship stopped and he went forward and like hit the beat. The
you didn't like comb the desert. You didn't like you weren't a fan of that.
No, I wasn't feeling that.
Man,
Elijah
that's
loves
crazy.
combing the desert. He is screaming into his headphones right now at you, Coach.
It's his favorite film moment of all time. I hear.
Just
So,
wasn't
Coach,
feeling it.
Speaking
Yes.
of things you're feeling, I hear you platinumed a game this week that is a very good game.
Number tree.
Talk
So
about
yeah, it was getting close, right, to the end of March, and so I had to at least, of all my gaming goals, I got to at least do one, right? At least meet one of them. So I think this is one that I can, which is Platinum Quarterly. So when I realized, okay, there was 4 puzzle pieces and 2 of the whatchamacallits.
Well, you didn't say the game, Coach. You didn't name the game yet.
Astro's Playroom.
Ooh.
So there's 4 puzzle pieces and 2
Like speed runs?
no, there's 2 like they're not puzzles, but what artifacts.
Gotcha.
So once I saw like, okay, it was pretty easy. I mean, it was good. And I thought the boss battle at the end was fun, right? It was really good.
The T-Rex one, yeah.
Yeah, it was just it was fun picking up all the artifacts. Like, oh wow, this is really cool, right? So I had a blast playing it. Like I really did have a blast.
Dude, I love going around in that like museum section too, and just like
Mhm.
walking around and getting up close to all the devices and stuff,
Yep.
and just looking at them. And it's for those who haven't played it, it's basically like a PlayStation museum, essentially. Like it's the game itself is. I mean, it's a platformer, but you go around and collect like a PS2 or like the PlayStation Eye toy or whatever it may be, and you can go look at all this stuff like in a
Or
room,
the
and it's
GPS
just
attachment
fascinating.
for the PSP.
Yeah. Isn't
So
that
it was like,
cool?
yeah, it's like for that generation. So like the first like basic, I mean, I think you could go to all of them, but there's one level. It was just all of the PS1 artifacts in that era.
Multi-tap.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. So what do you think about the actual game, like the platforming stuff? Because I thought that was phenomenal. Like I really hope they make a full, I know they did the VR one for
Mhm.
PS4, but I hope they make another like full-on Astro game. I would buy that
definitely.
in a heartbeat.
The monkey suit was really cool. I liked moving around on that. The ones where you're in the little ball, that was like okay. But the one where you were at the beach, that was probably one of my favorite levels was that beach. Just going around and just having fun.
I love a good beach level in video games. It's always like good vibes, especially like just growing up in Maine where it's winter 8 months a year sucks. But like, man, just being able to go to the beach whenever you want in a video game. Fantastic. Like that's why I always love Koopa Troopa Beach, like in Mario 64.
Mhm.
Just little things like that always puts a smile on my face.
Those damn crabs.
How do you feel it stands up? Because I know you're a big Nintendo head. Did it feel Nintendo-esque? Did it feel unique enough on its own?
It did, but it had Sony's footprint all over it, right? I mean, that was totally all Sony, and I just love what they did with it. And they made it to where all ages, so even I was able to find the art. You just knew where to look, right? After you kind of go through the first world, you kind of knew where things were hidden, right? And so it was a fun platformer. Very fun.
Wait, Coach, is that your way of saying you didn't use a guide?
The only one. Okay, so I haven't done the speed run, right? So there was one. What was it that I did? It was. I think it was for. You remember that one? There's that one part when you were the ball and you had to kind of like. You had to go to the side where there's no.
Oh yeah.
So I just kind of looked and see how they were kind of like.
Yeah.
But for the most part, actually, no. I didn't use a guide for Spider-Man or Miles Morales too. I got into those games like super deep.
Yeah.
So there's only, and now I'm playing. I'm getting the platinum for Republic Commando.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so I'm over half of the trophies, but there's one that I'm probably going to use a guide for. The only one I'll probably use a guide for is in the first Geonosis level. You have to go through this area where all of the what were the flying bugs called? I forget what they're called.
The Genosians?
Yeah, but there was something else. I wouldn't they called something else though. But
like
anyways,
the Elite Guard or whatever.
Right.
Like
so you go in that underground tunnel and you have to.
Oh, the eggs.
You have to kill. Yeah, you have to kill all the eggs. So I want to see how someone like approaches that, and then I'll kind of check it out. But so far, it's like it's the trophies are easy. You know, once you look at the on the PlayStation, you know how they give the brief description. List. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I platinumed that as well after I got my PS5 and great platinum, and I mean it's again just a fantastic game. But George, I was going to ask you because I think you're the only one of us. You have a PSVR, right?
I do. I'm missing a component to it, so I haven't been able to plug it in yet. But you're going to ask if I played the Astrobot VR?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you played that one.
I did. That game is great. Like that game's super, super fun, and it's very, very much in the same exact spirit as Astro's Playroom.
That's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I hope it'd be cool if they bring that back and do another VR title for that with the new PSVR coming out.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of, remember Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube?
Yeah.
Luigi's a Mansion. Welcome to the home.
So, you know, just a really fun, over-glorified tech demo, right?
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, and honestly, the way they used the DualSense in that game, I loved. I thought the stuff that they did with it was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely.
But, does Xbox Series X controller, does it have that level of
I don't think so.
sensitivity?
No.
Like I only asked, like I have an Xbox Series X. I don't really play it. Like it's very much like our media device. Like it's basically just like an extra cable box in our living room. It's awesome because there's a Spectrum app. But like playing Forza, like I felt like there was like some stuff just not quite as to the level of
they
PlayStation.
have the haptic triggers like a little bit. Like there's some extra, I don't know what they call it, but like the Xbox equivalent of like HD Rumble or whatever for the triggers. But that's it. There's like really nothing different about the Rumble within the grips or anything of that sort. So no, the DualSense is quite a bit more feature filled compared to the Series X controller. So
cool.
Yeah. So that all you've been playing, Coach? I guess you said that Republic Commando. That's cool. I'll have to jump into that at some point. I've never played that game.
And
actually.
Then so
awesome.
This is when I'll probably start getting deep into Fire Emblem Awakening.
Nice.
But now's the time, I think, to get these 3DS games, man.
Oh, they're already going up. They're already going up.
Bro.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at is it Dragon Warriors or Dragon Quest?
Dragon Quest.
All right. So Dragon Quest, those are over $100 for the 3DS alone.
Yep.
It's like,
nuts.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
Which is amazing. I got those at like discount clearance from Best Buy for like $20.
Nice. And I just don't have faith in Nintendo and their online with their retro systems, right? So I don't think we'll ever see these games again once the eShop for the 3DS goes away. I don't think we'll ever see these games again. I just don't see Nintendo re-releasing. I don't know. I don't know what Nintendo's going to do with the 3DS.
There's so many games too. Like the one that I really need to buy before it gets even higher in price than it already is Kid Icarus Uprising, because I don't have my copy of that anymore, and I adore that game. And I really don't foresee them putting that on any other system, and I know it's going to shoot up in price. So.
But don't you need that little stand to like really get into it?
You don't have to. I never really played it with that when it came out originally. You can play it with.
You're not a kid anymore, Austin. You're gonna need that stand. Your hands are gonna turn into.
That's true.
A claw,
You're probably
man.
right. But dude, I love that game. It is so good. It was very well made. So I need to get that. But I did want to talk briefly just before we move off stuff we've been playing. George, I know there's nothing you really wanted to talk about, right? Since you had 2 hours of Deep Rock.
Yeah, I tried. I tried to play a little Pokemon today.
Which
just
one?
because Diamond and Pearl, like the remakes, and I've been trying to do that just because like I've never actually stayed like up to date on a Pokemon game with like mystery gifts, and so I wanted to try to do that with this game and treat it more like a season of Pokemon, if that makes sense. So I just did like some battles today. Well, I was waiting for like emails from work to like give me edits to do or whatever. And it's really fun, but like, man, it's kind of a bummer that like playing this game, how many of the Pokemon are from like the original 150. And so like my team is like, I got my little Empoleon boy. I got my Shinx Ray, whatever that Lux Ray, whatever that Pokemon's called. And then I've got like Ponyta, Graveler, Haunter, which is like, cool. And like I would never use that team in the original series. So like I guess like, just based on what I've got, that's kind of neat. But yeah, it's a little disappointing just that like I kind of wish there was like more new monsters.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because I have a question for you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so what's the difference? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this. What's the difference between the national Dex and is it the Soto Dex or something like that? The Sinnoh Dex?
So the way I understand, one is like the region, and so it's like these are all the Pokemon that are available in this that are native to like the areas you can go to in the game. Okay. And then the other one is every single Pokemon ever.
Because, and the reason why I ask is I think it is the Diamond and Pearl remakes that you have to have not the national Dex, but the other Dex in order to get Eevee.
Yeah, you need to. It's cool though because you don't have to have every single one. You just have to have seen every single one, which is different, which is nice. That's a lot easier.
Every single Pokemon in the game, or just
in the region for the region.
I just wanted to talk briefly though about Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which came out last week, and honestly, we haven't played a whole lot of it yet. Andy and I have been playing it co-op because there is like a co-op mode. I will say the co-op mode isn't amazing though, because it's set up kind of like your basic Mario games, your 3D Marios, where there's one who's playing as Mario, and then there's a second person who's got like a minor role. Like in Galaxy, you had the person playing as Mario, and then one person had control of the pointer for the camera, and that was like all they did.
It's
and
like
then
offensive.
in Odyssey, in Odyssey, it's set up where one person's Mario and the other person is the hat. So like you can just move the hat around and like attack things, I guess. It's a little better than that at least, but in this one, the way it works is one person plays as Kirby and the other person plays as like a bandana Waddle Dee, and you have like a spear. And so like you're relatively capable of attacking and stuff, and it plays pretty similar. You still like float like Kirby does and all that same stuff. But the thing that's a little disappointing is you can't actually suck up enemies like Kirby, and you can't like take their powers. So the second player is like the same Waddle Dee with the spear the entire game, which is like actually kind of disappointing. But aside from that, it's been really
hold
really
on, sorry, we gotta talk about that a little bit more. That's BS, man. Like you're telling me like you're Nintendo, you're one of the most creative developers in the history of the entire medium. You couldn't think of a way to explain why two things can have like similar powers just to give the second person playing like a bone. Like
Right.
you couldn't
Well,
do anything, and
it's like, why couldn't one
sucks.
person just be a different color Kirby? Like, why did I don't know. Why do you need to explain that in the story? Just let somebody else play as Kirby. So, but it's fantastic. I mean, all that aside, I was hoping for a little more with the co-op, but all that aside, the little bit that we've played, it's really, really good so far. It's kind of a mix of Mario 3D World and like your normal 3D Mario. So it's not fully open, like open spaces, but it's not quite as locked as 3D World was either, camera wise. And so it's a good mix. And honestly, the gameplay itself is really good. I'm a little shocked that HAL Labs was able to pull off like a full 3D gameplay style pretty seamlessly. So I'm excited to play more at some point, and it's definitely a game I was really looking forward to. So I was glad to see it be pretty successful.
For the first time since college, I played a demo and then immediately had to buy the game. Like first time since Killzone 2. That demo for Kirby is incredible. It's like a half hour. It shows you like all the major, I assume maybe there'll be some twists, but like all the major ways you're gonna be spending your time in that game. And it's just pretty and it's fun and it's not hard, but it's like I don't feel like I'm playing a baby game when I'm playing it the way other Kirby games, Star Allies, feel when you play,
Yeah, and it's got that wonderful, not quite collectathon, but like the whole way that like Mario 3D World is set up, where you've got like, I think in that game it was like 3 stars or something in each level, and in this one it's you got to get 5 Waddle Dees in each level, and they're like hidden around, and there's different objectives for each level. So it's definitely got some replayability and stuff to it, which I'm super into. So I'm excited to play more and dig into it over the next few weeks. But
hell yeah.
That's really all I've been playing, though. And so with that, I wanted to kind of jump into our main topic here. And this is actually kind of inspired by a good friend of the podcast, Joel Valley, and his show Media Glitch over on YouTube. His crew kind of posted a video within the past day or two about when is it time to sell a video game or your video games or a video game collection, whether it be your games for a specific system or again, select games you're not playing or whatever it may be. And I just thought that was a really interesting topic, considering all of us, I think, are collectors to some extent. I'm not fully. I don't buy every single thing I have, but I've got a few hundred games at this point, so I'm still at least a little bit of a collector, and so I thought that was a fascinating topic. So I wanted to ask you guys. I mean, when do you sell your games? When is it okay for you to sell your games? And do you ever kind of get that oh man, I wish I hadn't done that kind of moment after you make that sale? Should you sell your games?
I haven't sold a game since like 2001, probably 2002.
Wow. Nice.
I really like replaying games. I also love comics, and it's just one of those things where like I like having a collection. I like having a library. I think it's really interesting to like see the tree rings of this medium that we like so much, like just comparing like Mario 64 and having that on the shelf with Sunshine, having that on the shelf with Galaxy 2, 3D World. Like I think it's really interesting to see like the history of the games. And ever since they introduced cases, yeah, they just look so great. Like the fact that PlayStation 2 cases looked exactly like DVD cases, I think was really important. And it sort of, I think that maybe subconsciously put me in that mentality where it's just like, oh no, I buy movies to keep movies. I'm not like here to like buy a movie and then sell it. And the same thing with games, where it's just like, oh, I'm not going to like spend 6 hours with this and then get rid of it. Like this was important to me. I might be a little too sentimental, I might be a little too nostalgic, but I really hate selling games, and I haven't done it in probably 20 years.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm good. Glad we had that viewpoint though, because Elijah, I think, is kind of the same mindset. I know he has a massive collection. Obviously, I'm sure he's got probably thousands of games at this point, and I know he never sells anything, but yeah, I mean, was it something that you knew at that moment, in the early 2000s, where you were like, all right, I'm stopping, or did it just kind of come up as a, hey, no, we're just not going to do it anymore?
I never really had like a lot of games for systems growing up. Like, we had probably like 8 games for Genesis, and then we probably had like maybe like 15 games for N64, which is like a lot in hindsight. But then like something happened where like I only had like 10 for Xbox. I had like around this like a dozen maybe for GameCube. And then same thing where I just like never really like broke 10. And then I remember being under the influence of something with my roommate in college. And we were like we were each other downtown, and there's like a whole bunch of used like game stores. There's like a mom and pop shop. There was a GameStop. There was a FYE. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that store. It's called like a For Your Entertainment. And it's just like an awesome vinyl and DVD and Blu-ray shop. And we were, like I said, under the influence. We just kind of like looked at each other like, I've never really had like a lot of games for a system. He's like, me neither, man. Let's do it. And then we just went ham on 360 games after that. And I think like I really credit this dude for like making me feel less embarrassed for how into games I was. Like I remember like meeting him in orientation. We were like, yeah, screw it. Like we might as well live with each other, because like if we don't choose each other, like who knows who we'll end up with. And we're like talking to him before moving day. It was just like, oh, I have a 360. Should I bring that down? He's like, no, I got a 360. Don't worry about it. And then it very quickly became clear. It's like, well, if you have a 360, then I can't play it because you're going to be playing it all the goddamn time. So like Thanksgiving break, I remember like immediately grabbing mine and like bringing it back. I'm like, hey, now we have 2 TVs. This is awesome. And just making it work that way. But like, it was like the first time, like just like living with someone who also cared about this hobby that I cared about. And that was kind of like the game changer. And so from then on, it was just like us trying to like amass a collection together. And we had like a library that like we would share. And then I remember getting like a PlayStation 3 for Christmas, and then a Wii for Christmas. Divorced parents for the win right there. And then all of a sudden he was just like, oh, can I use this TV on this side so I can play Super Mario Galaxy? I'm like, of course, I'll be over here playing Mag on PlayStation 3, just like mixing it up. But we just wanted to play as many games as possible. We thought it was really important to play as many different games as possible. This is also when I was like just starting to get really into IGN and like listening to games podcasts and stuff. And so thinking I want to do something in the industry. And yeah, that was like around the time everything clicked. And then I realized like, this is no different than video games. This is no different. This is no different than movies. This is no different than comics. I can't get rid of these because they're too important to me.
So what's your collection like now, I guess, is the last thing I'd ask you out of curiosity. Because I honestly, George, I don't know much about your collection. I don't know how big of a collector you are and what you have.
I have probably 1,200 games across all my systems. I've got mostly Xbox, PS3, PS4. I've got, those like media racks that they sell on Amazon.
Yep.
I've got like probably like 8 of those full of just like disc-based games. Like I just love that era. And I'm currently getting a Xbox modded at like a computer repair store with like a 2 terabyte hard drive. And I just want to like, I'm asking them specifically for the software that like lets me like rip discs and just like keep it on a hard drive, because I'm super concerned about disc rot. Like I have all these games and it would just suck if like by the time I was like finally ready to play them, I couldn't. And but yeah, I've got a lot of games, man. I really like this. I was really happy when you guys asked the podcast. I'm like, oh cool, yeah, no, I know a thing or two about games.
So Coach, what about you? What was the last time you sold a game, I guess, and when do you sell your games, if you do?
So I haven't gotten to the point where I'm selling my games yet, but I guess the first, level 1 of downsizing is I took a lot of my games and I got rid of the cases. So I bought sleeves for the individuals, and I have like 2 Vans boxes, right? So I went from having all of these physical games, and now I just have them in a 2 Vans boxes, right? So, but now that I have like, I have 3 FPGA systems, 2 of them by Analog. I have the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, right? The Super NT and the Mega SG. And then of course their Nintendo is so damn expensive. Like they re-released it last year, a year before, for like $500, and that's ridiculous, right? So I bought on Retro USB their AVS, which is the same thing, but for like $200. So technically, if I just get those ROMs, I'll be playing it. You know, I could even, I think I might even start doing that within this year, is just to trim the fat, right? Because if I could get those on ROMs and those systems can be jailbroke, then you're playing it the best way possible, right? So that's where I'm at right now. But with the 3DS, you know, with that whole eShop going out, games are going to skyrocket. So I think I might be adding to my collection here pretty soon.
Yeah,
I
I know we've been trying to grow our PS3 collections a little bit too. You know, you and I were both kind of talking about that as, I guess it's not quite as much a thing at the moment, but I know when the PSN stores were supposedly being closed for like the PSP and Vita and all that stuff, and they ended up not going all the way through with it. But that's when PS3 game prices really shot up, and so I think that's another area. Like I said, I know you had shown some interest in growing that collection a little bit. So,
and then even now, like, even though you buy a physical copy, you don't really own that copy anymore. It's so frustrating, modern day gaming, right? So like when this year, supposedly the new God of War comes out, right? How much is going to be on that disc, and how much do you need Sony's server to keep that game going, right? I mean, the whole fiasco with Gran Turismo right now, which is still going on.
It's sad. I mean, it's sad to me that, like, you know, the biggest examples recently, aside from Gran Turismo, were Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite. They didn't even have like the full game on the disc. So, you know, when servers go down in 20, 30 years, you know, like overall, you know, hopefully it'll be a while before they say, hey, you can't even hook your Series X up to the internet whatsoever. But when those servers go down, those games will be totally unplayable. We'll not be able to play those games.
Yeah, and I think the younger generation, right, the teenagers right now, they're the ones that are going to suffer through that, right? Because when those servers finally go down, you know, how old will I be? 70s, right? 80s. So, you know, but I think it's this youngest generation right now that are in school that are playing. You know, they don't care about physical copies. A lot of them don't, right? They just download and they go. But there's going to be a time, like, what if Fortnite just kind of like, okay, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Coach, I have literally never considered that. That's amazing. Like, the things we're nostalgic for are still around and we can still access, right? Like, that's... God, you are a teacher, man. Always thinking about the kids. Look at you.
yeah. And the thing is like, they're really no different. Like, when people, like, we had our Fortnite in each of our own generation. It was just a different game.
GoldenEye, baby. Yeah.
Yeah. See, there you go. It's just done differently. And every time there's that one game, parents freak out. You know, the ESRB ratings come out and media wants to make it seem like it's a bad thing, right? So
wait, you were young enough when like that came out. I don't mean to make an old joke, but
which
like,
one?
The ESRB and like the Mortal Kombat like scare, right?
Right.
Did you have to do convincing to your parents that like?
Well, that was like when I was finally like in my early
Undergrad.
20s. Yeah, my
Okay.
early 20s. Because
Apologies.
the big one, the big one was Mortal Kombat 2, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Because when you saw that pixel of blood, bro, every politician wanted to jump on that bandwagon that video games bad, you know? So yeah. But see, like, my generation was Contra, you know, that was a big co-op. That was really the first true co-op game, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's just so different now. And it's like, you got to be careful what you're going to be purchasing. You know, if you're just like one of the teachers I work with, right? Good dude. He bought the digital PS5, and he can't really bring his PS4 games over, but he's okay with that. He's okay with just getting them digital.
Yeah.
And then here we are, like, remember what it was like to really, how fun it was to collect, like 2012, 2011, like it was still like finding stuff in the wild, right? It was fun back then. It was good. And we were in a sense kind of like mini versions of hoarders, right? Where we just got what we could. We didn't really know about the game, but hey, it looks like, people are talking about it, right?
Well, and like that was when I was like old enough to like have my own money and like not have a dad around to judge me. Because I was in college, I was like a sophomore, and I just remember like going down to GameStop and we're like, oh, let's look for a 360 game, and then it was just like, oh, hey, Metroid Prime is on sale for $5. Oh, well, that's like I've heard really good things about that game. I never played it when it was out, but yeah, let's check it out. I didn't play Metroid Prime until I was like 20 years old, 19 years old. And like in my college dorm room, because I brought one of my GameCubes down. I was just like, this is like one of the best video games I've ever played in my entire life. Like, and then like because that was such a good hit, it was just like, okay, cool. Oh, it's buy two get one free in the used section. Like, all right, Twin Snakes. I don't know anything about this. I'll grab that. Ooh, Melee. I didn't have that. My friend had that. We always had to borrow it. Okay, grab that. And they just had like original Xbox games, and I should have bought Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for original Xbox, but I didn't because I'm an idiot. But it was just, yeah, that was like the last time. I think the reason I care so much about that is just because like that is my favorite era of gaming. Early 2000s, Y2K era, like
easily the best era.
It's just, there's something so special where it's like, you could like taste the future, and like they were doing everything they could, but it just quite wasn't there enough. My favorite console of all time is still PlayStation 3. So like if I see a PS3 game that I've never heard of before, that's like a snap buy for me. I bought one the other day called like Magus because I'm like, I've never even heard of this game. Don't think I know this developer. Yeah. Oh, it's $12. Like, okay, yeah, I'll pick that up off eBay. So that's my sweet spot. But like, man, there's just like the Dreamcast, the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, the GameCube, like that little 4-person brawl between those companies was just like such a special era. And like, I miss being able to just walk into a store and find those games. I went to a used DVD store the other day, up in Bangor, Maine, which is like the nearest big city, and they had some games on display that were like their high price items. And let's see, I'm scrolling through my photos trying to get to them. All right, here we are. They had Paper Mario, the 1,000-Year Door. Guess how much that was?
120.
110.97.
Jeez.
They had Medal of Honor Heroes for Wii. I don't know why that one was behind the case. That one was $28.97. That
That's
game I feel like was $3.99 just a couple of years ago.
Considered shovelware. Almost.
We've also got guess how much these are all like original game art. Actually, the Paper Mario was the player's choice, so it has like that crappy yellow label on the binding, like on the spine. Guess how much Pokemon Platinum was?
Oh, like
$250.
180.
$190.97.
Wow.
That is nuts.
And so like with this Nintendo decision, I'm really excited about like the PlayStation equivalent to Game Pass. I think I will care about that in a way I just don't care about Game Pass. Like Game Pass to me is just like a demo program that I pay for, just because I just prefer the PlayStation ecosystem, which is funny because like the original Xbox is like probably my favorite console from that era. But it's so freaking sad that we're getting to the point where it's like, yeah, you can play your old PlayStation 1 games if you give me extra money every month. It's like, oh, really? Because like I remember when I bought this game from you on the PlayStation 3 and I just like gave you money and I owned it, and then you just took that back, and now that apparently means nothing anymore. So I gave you all this money, which was more valuable back then because inflation is a cool thing. But yeah, sure, I guess I'll just like rent these games from you every month. Like I just hate the current model. It sucks so much. Like,
yeah, it's not good because I mean you're going to lose it at some point. It's going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's disappointing too because while we've got that going on, like you said, George, all those old games are going up in price. I was just looking on my Game Eye app. which is like a game collecting app. You can put in all your games, and it'll give you an estimated value based on like average eBay sale prices and stuff. And I was looking on there, and my copy of Gex, Enter the Gecko for PS1, I bought that for, maybe 3 years ago. I bought it for like $10, and it shows that it's worth $35 now.
Wow.
And that is not like I guess a decent amount of people played it, but it's not like a beloved PS1 game. So
no, that game was pretty rough.
Yeah.
It just sucks, man. Like all this, like it really started. I started noticing this with basketball when they started adding like the sponsor logos to like the actual jerseys.
Yeah.
Like the Celtics, I think their first sponsor was like GE. So it'd just say like Celtics on the front, and then there'd be like a giant GE logo like off the top corner of it. And it's like, man, like I understand that like you make money this way, but like this is Austin, I'm sorry, 52 minutes swear. Like this is lame. Like this is so goddamn lame.
Right.
Like I have to sit there thinking about like this sport that like I love. And every time I see Tatum do like a slick dunk, like I have to see like just a giant logo of some like electric company that like I don't care about. Yeah, sorry. And so it's like another thing where it's just like, oh, cool. Like because you want to extract more money from people every single month, I have lost every article of convenience I've ever had, and like what made me respect you in the first place. Like the fact that I can't just there's no reason we can't buy DS games on Switch. Like there's zero reasons that they can't make that work. Like put the screens right next to each other. There's minimal touch screen
even
capacity.
if they don't do that, just make some adapter thing so you can turn the system sideways and make it vertical and have the controllers on the sides. Like that
100%. Yeah, do that. That'd be great. Like there's no reason for them to like not do this. And I feel like old Nintendo would have done this. Like the way they were like, like the e-card reader and like all this stuff they were trying out. And same thing with Sony trying all this like dumb stuff that they were doing with like PlayStation minis and whatnot. Like it's just lame. Like everything is so freaking lame. Like this future sucks. Like it started off so great in the early 2000s, and now everything is just all about like recurring revenue streams. And it's like, dude, just be cool. Like be cool for 5 goddamn minutes, please. Let me just like give you money in exchange for a product or a service. Like, and don't like keep things behind exclusively a service. Like stop making me rent my childhood, you turds. Like it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, rant over.
Well, I want to add to that rant is I remember
rant not
at the
over.
very
Go for it,
beginning.
Coach. Tag in.
Okay. At the very beginning of last generation, one of my biggest pet peeves, and now it's not a big deal, but I knew things were changing, is day one patches. That's when I knew gaming was changing, right? Not for the better. So, and here's the thing about the whole Gran Turismo, and I don't want this to be like a Gran Turismo topic, but once everyone got their reviews in, they changed the game to where now you have to grind more to try and get these high value cars, right? They change the game for what it is. And that right there is a slippery slope, and gaming's changing, man. And like on the Switch, I'll give it to you. Nintendo has been good about updating the N64 emulator. They've made like three or four changes so far, like getting it better. Ocarina of Time has actually gotten better. It's looked better, played better. So that's good. But on what George said, we're renting our childhood. Like we could play it. Like I have my N64 right here. We could play it. It'll look good. But it looks so damn good on the Switch, right? I mean, like just the way that that is presented. So yeah, the model, I don't like the model either.
I feel like, honestly, we are not very far away from, hey, this game is exclusive to Game Pass or Spartacus or whatever it may be on PlayStation. And that's the only way you can get it, is by And I'm not saying old games. I'm talking about new stuff. Like, let's just say Gran Turismo 8 comes out in 6 years, and you can only play it if you have a Spartacus subscription. I honestly feel like we are not that far away from that, and that's kind of stressful for me.
It's making it not fun anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, isn't that like I know we're at like different stages in our lives, and so like we're realistically never gonna be like, hey man, I just got Gran Turismo, and then like, you know, you drive over to a friend's house and just like slap it into their PlayStation. Like, I feel like we're pretty far from that, and like you can't even really do that now because let's say you go to a friend's house, like, oh hey, I brought Gran Turismo, let's play it. It's like, okay, let me install this game disc, let me copy it to my hard drive. Oh crap, there were 2 big updates. Okay, so it's actually going to take 3 hours before we put the disc in to when we can actually play the game. That's its own problem. But it's just like, it's not as easy as it used to be. It's not as fun as it used to be. And it's just, it's completely different. And Coach, like, I can't stop thinking about what you're saying about like the games that kids recently and today are playing are just not going to be available. Like, I keep thinking about every single game that was like on the App Store that has just been delisted. Like, I love Tiny Death Star. I thought that game was great. That was like one of my favorite mobile games. That was like my original I can't sleep, let me build a level. And it's just gone. Like, they just like removed like a very successful Star Wars game.
So this is actually about to happen with really the only mobile game that I've ever gotten into, which is Dragalia Lost, and it's a Nintendo game.
Oh,
And this summer it is shutting down, and you cannot play it anymore. Which
really?
is so disappointing because it is a super well made game. I've never even played with any other people. I've played entirely single player, and come I want to say it's July, it's gone. It's gone. You can't play it anymore. And I've probably spent like $70-$80 on that game, like over the span of 4 or 5 years. Yeah, and it's just vanishing, which it's just crazy that's the world we live in. So. To answer my own question, though, before we wrap it up, because I haven't answered on my end, the whole trading in situation. I know that was a whole separate conversation like 20 minutes ago, but might as well get back to it here for the end. I trade in games occasionally, but it's very rare, or sell games. Really, the way my collection works, I've got about probably a little over 200 titles, but I try and kind of limit what I buy for space purposes. And so like behind me, you guys can see it at least, but I've got like a bookshelf back there, and that's pretty much the only spot for me to put my games in our apartment. And so once that thing starts overflowing, it's like, all right, something's got to go. And so typically what I do is, and again, over the past 5 years, I've probably sold less than 10 games. So it's really not like something I do that often, but I just focus on the games I care about. You know, certainly I'm never going to get rid of a Monster Hunter game or a Zelda game or Mario game. I'm never going to get rid of anything like that. But like a few months ago, I got rid of Dead or Alive 5 or something for PS4. I think it was 5. Whatever the first Dead or Alive was that came out on PS4. I was like, all right, really do not care about this game. I haven't played it in ages. I barely played it when I first got it, and so I'm going to get rid of it. And so that's kind of my philosophy. If it's something that I don't care about, a game that doesn't really matter to me, I have no desire to have like a complete collection or have tons of games just for the purpose of having them. So that's really the only time I sell my games, but that's kind of where I'm at.
In my experience, if you sell games, you will eventually try to buy them back.
I guess it depends on what it is, though, because like I have no desire to buy a Dead or Alive again, personally.
But we'll just see about that,
example.
Austin.
For example. But no, I agree with you. There have certainly been times, though. Like I sold my Platinum, Pokemon Platinum, when I was younger, like when I was in maybe freshman or sophomore in high school. Obviously super regret selling that.
But you know, one day I'm at that point where one day I do have to get rid of this, right? I mean, I'm going to have to get rid of it sometime. So do I keep buying physical? Do I sell what I can? Like my Switch collection is just, I don't need any more Switch games, right?
Says who, Coach? Says who?
Right. And it's so tough. Like, but I've been like over the last, I think 18 months, I've been really good at, because we're all guilty of this, right? Or at some point we were, that we just pick up a game because it just came out new, right? Then I got good at waiting until like 6 months when it goes on in, and now it's like there's been quite a few games that have released that just don't pick up anymore because I know that I'm not going to play it for a while. So like, for instance, Kirby, right? Kirby, like, do I need that physical? If I do buy it, do I really need that physical? Yeah. There's not going to be a lot of updates. So it's almost like if you buy that 1 terabyte card, you're almost okay to buy digital and just put all your games on the Switch digital, right? But one day we're going to be getting rid of all these. So, but there's ones I hold on to.
I was just going to say, of the new systems, the only one that I actively like collect for is the Switch. I really don't buy anything for PS5. I think I have 4 PS5 games so far, and I've had my PS5 for, I guess, over a year at this point. And Series X, I haven't even bought a single game for. So I only
Elijah's smart because he's collecting PS5 games, but he's like, I think the only thing he really cares about is getting all of like the limited run releases, which is like, okay, that's like the Criterion Collection equivalent of PlayStation. Like, okay, that completely understand that. I will say, sell your games if you want to, but like, man, you just never know. Like, I don't even want to tell you how much I bought into like Pokemon Black and White for last summer. I don't even want to say, but also like, it is significantly less than what those games are selling for now. So like it was an expensive purchase, but like, it's not that bad. There was someone over the weekend on Twitter who said, I think buying comics and reading comics are actually 2 different hobbies. And I think that's so true for comics. I think that's so true for games. Because, like, I'll be honest, I'm looking over, I got my PlayStation 4 games in my office with me, which is funny because I don't have a PlayStation 4 in here. But I like looking at them, and I'm like, yeah, man, I played a lot of those games. There's a lot of games, like, still in shrink wrap. And to Coach's point, I did my best on PlayStation 4 to not buy games at launch. With Nintendo games, I don't really care about buying them at launch or not, just because, I don't care about waiting and just buy them at launch because they like never go on sale anyway. It's like,
they never
it's $60 now, $60 later, who cares?
Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze.
Yeah, buddy. And how? God. No, I'm not condoning piracy, but I will say there are other options, to what's happening to games right now. There are other options. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying what those options are. I'm not again, not condoning piracy. But if you don't like the current paradigm of video games, there's other options. What can you say?
I mean, that's a good discussion there because to me, piracy is what you buy on the shelves and then, playing Switch games on your PC, right? Mm-hmm. But playing a ROM of Contra from the NES. But that's a whole nother discussion.
Well, it is a whole nother discussion. And at some point, it's like is this a form of historic preservation? I mean, that's the real question, because you look at Nintendo and what they do and what Sony's doing, and even Microsoft to an extent, although I'd say they're the best ones so far at keeping their games on their new system. But it's like, man, they are really just letting their old games fall apart and not stay in the mainstream and stay on their new systems, and that's no good for anybody. So
it's just weird because they were so good at it. Like, Nintendo was so good at it. You bought a Wii and you also bought an NES, you also bought an SNES, you also bought an N64, and it could play GameCube games and Wii games. So you owned ostensibly every Nintendo home console. And like, look at them now. And like, I understand the Nintendo Online system, like, that's great. But like, I don't want to pay that much money every year when I want to play 5 games. Right. Like, I just want my 5 favorite games, and then I want to like stop paying. Please let me stop paying. Sorry, Coach.
No, you're right. I agree with you.
All right, guys. So I think we'll wrap it up there then, and appreciate everybody listening, and send us in your thoughts about both, the state of gaming today as far as digital and physical, and where you see things going, and then certainly write in your thoughts on trading in games, selling games, what you think about it, what your collection's like, and kind of how you go about doing that stuff with your own games. So, of course, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Our @ is always at frameskippod. You can write us in some questions at bit.ly/frameskipq. That's bit.ly/frameskipq. We're all on Twitter. George is at purplebird616. That's also where you can find his comic book podcast, Short Box Summary, also down in the description below. George, what's next for Short Box Summary? Give us a little tease.
I don't know. There might be an episode next week. Who cares?
Okay.
This week, I'm
Understood.
finally publishing like the MCU with like comic book pairing. I'm finally doing that this week.
Awesome.
So hopefully by the time you hear this, that episode should already be out. Again, I just hate audio editing. And then next week, Astonishing X-Men issues 7 through 12. That's a story called Dangerous, where the Danger Room becomes the center of attention.
Well, there you go. So go check that out. Of course, you can find Short Box Summary pretty much anywhere. I am on Twitter at Austin J. Eller. Elijah is on Twitter at Loco Lizardman. You can also find him on Twitch at Loco Lizardman. He streams there pretty frequently. Again, link down below in the description of this episode. And then Seth is on Twitter at Seth the 90s Kid. So we appreciate you listening, and go follow all that stuff and listen to George. Go watch Elijah's streams, and we will catch you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Smooch.